Hey everybody, so today I'm going to be teaching you a little bit about functional communication skills and how you can teach high schoolers about social skills. So as many of you know, I was in the high schools this semester and I love high schoolers. I'm involved with high schoolers in and out of the school setting through volunteer work that I do. And I have to say, this is probably like the number one thing I saw in the high schools is working on social skills. Even if they didn't even have a pragmatic deficit, social skills are hard when you're a high schooler. It's just an awkward time. So we are very lucky as SLPs that we get to teach a little bit of these social skills. And there are 7 steps on how you can do this that I attached in my handout. So, and I'll be honest with you, when you're in a school setting, you don't do all 7 at the same time typically. You don't have the time for that. And typically, sometimes these are a little harder things to talk about. So you might do like 3 one day and then the rest another day. So it all depends on the skill you're trying to teach. So I'm going to tell you real quick about the 7 elements that you should include when you're trying to teach social skills to students. So you want to first start with an introduction. Be excited about it. So tell the students about the skill that they're going to learn. This is a prime time to have the students share with you what they think they know about this skill. And I love using this with like baseline data because you compare what they thought they knew about it in the beginning and you compare it to the end and be like, I knew nothing about that skill. And it's really great to see students grow in that element. So how you can do this, be like, okay, have any of you ever experienced X, whatever it may be, and have them share. The next part is the boring part, but you got to do it. So it's the guided instruction. You got to lay out the steps that are involved in the skill. Students are not motivated in this part, so don't be discouraged. But it's really important that they know the steps that are involved. So you're going to do that real quick, and then you're going to go straight into modeling. So this is where you, the clinician, are going to model, demonstrate, role play, talk about from your personal experience about the skill. So some people show videos, some people do it themselves. I personally prefer to do it myself. It's a lot more engaging with students. So then you can move from there into rehearsal. So this is where the students will describe the skill, and what's needed for it. This is a time when the students can role play between themselves or have the student and the clinician role play. From there, you're going to move into feedback. So this is providing positive feedback to the student to help them guide development. I find a lot of times students really struggle with this part. When they do the rehearsal, it can be wrong. However, it's not a time for us as clinicians to be like, no, that was awful, terrible, whatever. Be positive. Hey, I like that you did this, but did you ever consider maybe doing this? And some students, it's all situational. I had students, we had to be like, hey, that was weird. Because some students don't necessarily take like the kind feedback all the time. So it's really situational. And you always have to take on how the student best learns. Now, when I say I would tell the student, that was weird, they didn't be like, oh my gosh, and cry. I would cry if somebody told me that. They were like, oh, why was that weird? And then it's kind of more of a guided conversation time. So from the feedback, again, all dependent on the student, you're going to move into the planning. So you're going to have the students brainstorm about the skill. Who am I going to use this skill with? When am I going to use the skill? And how am I going to use this skill? I promise you, please make skills that you teach students something that they can use in their everyday life. Otherwise, if students can't understand that they're going to use this skill outside of the speech room or outside of just one opportunity, they don't care about it. For example, like formal dining. How often are your students going to be in a formal dining where they're dressed in a tux? Okay, maybe once. You might eventually get to teaching that, but if we're still working on friendships, we probably should try to sequence what we're teaching our students first. You can't just jump from somebody having no friends and really struggling socially to, hey, this is how we have a formal dinner. You got to fill in the in-between for them to understand that everything is connected. Then you're going to encourage generalization. This is the final step. So like I said, you're encouraging the student to use this at home, at work, at school, and then you can later ask the student how it went. The book said you can observe students Guys, that is so awkward. I did it once because I asked my supervisor if I could do that. Oh, never again will I ever do that. Every student is watching you, and it is the most fake observation I've ever seen because they know you're there watching them, and it's not necessarily a true understanding of what the student did. So just always be aware of the environment and the situation you could be in. Because if you're sitting there at lunch, that is just probably not going to go over super well. So it's maybe best to assess generalization through a question of student report. So my favorite activity I ever did with students was like step 1 of social skills, friends. A lot of students are like, I have no friends at all, or everybody's my friend, or I don't care about people, blah, blah, blah. So these activities I'm going to show you today are activities you can use with high school students, typically students who have pragmatic deficits, and they can be used with students with emotional disorders, autism, intellectual disabilities, and sometimes we even had general education students that sat in our social skills class because their friends were in it, and like what a great learning opportunity for our students. So we're going to learn today about social circles. This is a lovely visual I have. So you're going to provide the student with this thing. So this is a circle where it's like you recognize that every individual that we interact with falls in a different circle and different rules apply to these circles. For example, I used this with a student who had a difficulty understanding of sharing and would just take everything from anybody. It didn't matter if she didn't know you, she would take food right off your tray. Okay, well that's, in the words we called it in high school, that's weird. And that was a student I had to say that with, and she couldn't understand why. So that's when I brought out my handy dandy social circle. And what you're gonna do is we're gonna go through our steps. So you're gonna introduce the student about the skill. Guys, we're going to talk about our friends and the social circles, that people that we interact with, where they fall. And so you're going to instruct them. Okay, so we've got our purple circle. This is me. The only person that falls in this circle is you and nobody else. This is the closest you can be with somebody. You're going to move into your blue circle. This is family. And you can ask the students at this time, and this is kind of goes into the introduction, who falls into your blue family circle? Can be your mom, your dad, your sister. Then you're gonna move into your green circle. This is your friendship circle. Who are some of your friends? Then you're gonna move into your yellow circle, acquaintances. Who are some of your acquaintances? Acquaintances are people that you've met before and maybe you've only seen a little bit, but you don't know a whole lot about them. Orange are community helpers. Community helpers are people that would tend to help you. Who would you consider a community helper? These could be teachers, doctors, police officers. And then finally we get into our red zone. That's strangers. And these are people that we have no idea who they are. So you can then move into this in so many different ways. You can teach the skill of who falls in the circles. Some students struggle with that. 2, what are the rules in the circle? Like how close do I stand to the person? What can I share with this person? What can this person and I do together? So you can take this in so many different avenues. But for purposes of this video, we're going to talk about sharing. So, well, actually, let's do space. How close should you be to this person? So you, the clinician, are going to model. And I would typically have my teacher friend here, but social distancing, you know. And I'd be like, okay, how close? This is my friend, Susie. She falls in my green circle. How close should Susie and I stand from each other? And we would model this. And then you're going to go into rehearsal. Have the students get with their friends and have them act like they're strangers, they're community helpers, and have them figure out distances and talk about it. Because sometimes I'll pair students that don't really know each other. I'm like, okay, you guys are acquaintances. And we're going to push them really close, like side by side with each other. And you're gonna ask them, how does this feel? They're gonna be like, this is weird. I'm gonna be like, yeah, it is awkward. So who are people that are acquaintances that we shouldn't really stand that close to? And then you can move into your feedback. Hey, great job. I really like how you are at an appropriate distance. You can still hear the person talk. You're not being rude, and you're still an appropriate distance away. Like, that's awesome. And then you're going to plan with them. Okay, well, now I know about my circles. who am I going to use my circles with? Well, you use them everywhere, you guys. So help them realize this. And then you're going to ask them later, hey, how'd it go now that you know about these circles? They're going to be like, well, it was kind of hard. I didn't really know who was an acquaintance and who was a friend. And there you move into your next session. This is such a really great activity. I even have different circle cards where I can put up a picture of people they know or don't know, and they would hold these cards up and vote for them. You got to make it fun, you got to make it exciting, and you got to make it to the point. Like I said, this is one of my favorite activities to use, and I hope you can find some good applications with this activity. Thank you.